So for the course of the next half hour, I want to talk about the reverberations of the trucker convoy, the Freedom Convoy. I want to talk a little bit about Tamara Leach's trial, which bizarrely and incredibly and atrociously will continue on well into the spring. I want to talk about what's happening with other elements of the trucker litigation and what the legacy of the truckers will be. We have a hand in that legacy at Rebel News. We proudly published Tamara's autobiography called Hold the Line, which was a massive bestseller and helped fix the story that was told with lies by the regime media. And of course, our cousins at the Democracy Fund have crowdfunded Tamara's legal defense. So we believe in Tamara Leach. And joining us now to talk about Tamara Leach, her trial, the truckers, and the future is our friend Keith Wilson, King's counsel and a lawyer during the crisis for the trucker convoy. Keith joins us now via Skype.
Thanks for having me on, Ezra. Good to see you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Not only were you a lawyer for the Freedom Convoy, but you were a lawyer on other projects too, including, for example, if memory serves, the lawsuit involving Maxime Bernier and Brian Peckford about the ban, the no-fly list for unvaccinated people on airlines. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I initially got involved. It was my wife who was increasingly concerned with her background as a university degreed RN nurse retired, seeing what was happening with the COVID decision-making and the mandates and the apparent rationales for them. And of course, me seeing the civil liberties aspects and the impacts it was having on everyone, that she asked me to get involved and take a case, and I agreed to be a contract lawyer to the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, representing former Premier Brian Peckford and a representative charter challenge on behalf of 6 million unvaccinated Canadians who had their right to travel in the second largest country by landmass in the world, their fundamental charter right of mobility, violated by these arbitrary vaccine mandates that prohibited them from flying, taking a ship, a boat, or train. And so, yeah, I led one of the challenges there up into the federal court.
Disgracefully, that matter was not only thrown out, but the Court of Appeal said they wouldn't even hear it because it was moot, because it was over. It's funny how that was moot because it was over, but the prosecution of truckers, whether they're in the Windsor area, the Ottawa area, Coutts, Alberta, or of course Tamara Leach, that's apparently not moot. The government will continue to prosecute the cases they want, but they apparently don't have to go and justify their constitutional infringements. I think that reduces respect for the legal system. It's incredible to me, Keith, that the Supreme Court of Canada, as far as I know, hasn't yet bothered itself with hearing any cases emanating from the lockdowns. I mean, correct me if I've missed one, but here we are, almost 4 years after the beginning of the pandemic. We had lockdown laws, vaccine laws, quarantine laws, mandatory airport quarantines in hotels. We had every infringement imaginable. And the Supreme Court, almost 4 years later, apparently has had more important things to do. Am I right on that they haven't heard a pandemic case?
You are. And it's not just at that level. What we've seen is our courts so far have not been willing to do a thorough examination, to allow evidence to come before them, to do a thorough examination of the fundamental premises that led to this massive loss of rights, this massive overreach of government, these incredible harms economically, socially, educationally, relationship-wise, mental health-wise for people that weren't able to be at the side of dying loved ones, or special events, weddings, the educational harm to our children, and so on. Our courts are a very important institution. And regrettably, I believe that the courts are demeaning their own value and their own role in our society, and Canadian society and democratic society, when they decline to give an objective, thorough analysis of the evidence that is increasingly clear that these decisions were horrifically wrong.
Yeah. You know, it's incredible to me that that they won't even hear the case. I mean, if it would be one thing if they heard the case and ruled in favor of the authoritarian lockdowns. That would be very disappointing. But for them to refuse to even hear the cases, including the flights of the no-fly list case that you referred to me is atrocious. You know, I think one of the worst moments, and I've mentioned this on the show before, is that early on, when vaccine mandates were still very new and were subject to looming court challenges, where labor unions were forcing this on their members, or refusing to grieve them, where the science was very iffy, but the government was firing people from federal institutions, including the Canadian Armed Forces, when they were banning people. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court himself announced publicly that he was bringing in a vaccine mandate for the Supreme Court of Canada staff itself. So there were all these cases across Canada in labor tribunals, in courts. It was a live issue. They had not been adjudicated yet. Tested facts had not yet been brought to court. The law had not been examined. And the Chief Justice short-circuited all of that. He headed it all off in the past by announcing, hey, everybody, we're invoking a vaccine mandate at our office. And I just happen to be the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court. So anyone who across this country who thinks they're going to challenge this, just read between the lines on how I'm going to vote. Like, it wasn't just an atrocious violation of civil liberties for the staff at the Supreme Court. It was a way of telling every other judge, prosecutor, and lawyer in the country, don't even bother trying to challenge a vax mandate. I've just shown you that not only am I going to do it, I'm going to boast about it in public. And what are you going to do about it? I think that was perhaps the most disgraceful moment for the Supreme Court during the entire pandemic. What do you think?
Well, yes. And not just that court, unfortunately. There was no obligation on part for the court to release private medical information of its staff and its judges. There are privacy considerations here, and they should have been respected, in my view. But there's another one. Let me give a little vignette of what it felt like to be one of those lawyers in these courtrooms. Of course, not the Supreme Court, because we never got there, but the other ones. And it was the masking. So you're going into court, and, we all visualize when you go into a courtroom, there's this huge distance between you and the judge, and they're above you. Right? That's how all courtrooms are set up.
Yeah.
So first of all, you got distancing. So why am I even have to put a mask on? But you've got a box of masks in front of you. And on the end of the box in big bold letters, it says, warning, this mask will not protect against respiratory virus, the spread of respiratory viruses, including COVID-19.
Yeah. And
you're sitting there waiting to prepare, and this box is sitting at you, and you're going, this is theater.
Yeah.
This is theater. And oh my goodness, the court's playing along with the theater. Oh, yeah. So it's been a deeply, another senior lawyer said to me on a call when I was dealing with a file unrelated recently, that he believes that history will see this as a very dark period for our judiciary and jurisprudence in general.